go on to another question, and this is from John O'Brien, please.
Well, I was refused funding for my chemotherapy drugs because of a postcode lottery. Now, I had to raise £16,000 to buy them privately, obviously with help. Why was I penalised because of where I live?
Julia Goldsworthy.
Well, we know that there's a postcode lottery out there, and even in terms of co-payment, we learned this week that in some areas people are able to buy drugs privately and still receive NHS treatment, while in others they're expected to pay for the full cost of their treatment. So we know that there is already a postcode lottery out there in terms of what drugs you can access and whether or not you can pay for them and still receive treatment. I think we need to look at the way that co-payment is working in social services at the moment, where actually it gives people real freedom to choose what they want, and if that principle can apply in other services, then I think we have to look at how that can be read across into the NHS. I think what we have to be really careful about is making sure that we're not denying people treatment simply because they can't afford it.
John O'Brien,
that has to be the priority.
John O'Brien,
that's exactly what's happening.
John O'Brien, was your chemotherapy drugs are available in other places without payment?
Oh yes, yes.
Yeah. And you know that for a fact?
Definitely. This was August 2006.
Yeah.
If I lived in Scotland, no problem. Different health authorities in this country, different counties, no problem. Stoke-on-Trent, sorry. Now, £16,000 is a lot of money.
Yeah.
And this was right. I haven't got £16,000. My 83-year-old mother had to borrow money off a house to help me, along with all my friends, my Northern Soul friends, my football family as well. They all helped me. I haven't got that sort of money. Now, look, it's over for me now. I've had the drugs. It's all been done and dusted. But what about everybody else?
Okay, Jeff Hoon.
We have sought to eliminate precisely the problem that you describe, and I perfectly well understand where if you personally and others feel that they're not getting the same kind of fair treatment across the health service, then that is something that you rightly complain about, and in your position I would do exactly the same. So can I be practical about this? You write to me at the House of Commons, I will take it up with Alan Johnson, the Health Secretary, and we will look at the particular problem that you have and you describe. But I assure you that across the health service we've sought to ensure that we have consistent, fair standards, and they're based on the work of the National Institute for Clinical Excellence, where we ensure that drugs are properly tested, properly looked at. Sometimes what happens, I'm not saying it happened in your case, but sometimes what happens is that new drugs are introduced, they're not always put through the right processes before they're allowed to be used right across the country. So what we have sought to do is establish a proper, fair basis on which these drugs are used but equally across the community.
You said we've been trying to eliminate this. Are you saying that if you discover that John O'Brien was wrongly refused these drugs, with consultation with the Secretary of State, you'll refund him his £16,000 because it was unfair and wrong?
I think you'll find, David, that there have been legal cases where precisely that has happened, where people have challenged these decisions. But we can't go into your personal circumstances, the kind of detail that I would need to do to be able to understand what has happened.
But you said you tried to eliminate this, and yet he clearly is an example of somebody who hasn't had it.
But I have to say, from my experience, and sadly, I do see these cases. My constituencies, alongside a county boundary, I accept that there are different practices in different parts of different health authorities, but without being able to go into the kind of detail that we can't go into this evening, I wouldn't be able to, neither would any other member of Parliament who sees these kinds of cases from time to time, to be able to resolve it.
But the point is, it's not been eliminated. You said you were trying to eliminate it, but it's not eliminated.
The public that's having these raffles and collections in pubs and going around to people shaking tins. Where has all this money come from, all of a sudden, for these bloody banks and everything? All of a sudden, we've got a load of money.
Let's go.
I must say, you look very well and you're in good voice, so I hope that means that your drugs work. I've had people in my constituency who've written to me and I've asked the Health Authority to reconsider, and they have in some cases. But there's another side to this. The drug companies make a fortune. They then suddenly invent a drug that's £30,000 a treatment or something, and then they even go to charities and fund legal actions, and I think sometimes they're winding people up and their fear for the people they love to make the health service pay for more and more and more expensive drugs. So we've got... No, we've got a problem, yes. So we need to have a sensible way of deciding and not let the drug companies just misuse us and misuse people's ill health.
Yeah, but when did it going to happen? It didn't just happen. It's been going on for ages.
I've just said to you that I've had some decisions like that changed by people coming to me.
I'm not having
and you should all do that. But also, we've got to watch it. The drug companies are winding this up.
All right, John O'Brien, just hold your horses for a moment, because a lot of other people with their hands up. And I'll come to this gentleman here in the front.
Is this not a further example, like the banks, that the government that's voted in by the people is more concerned with the people who are looking at the shares and stocks every day and not at the normal person who needs this money? We seem to be more interested in this Labour government, any government at the moment, of the people who are making the money off us, not the people not working for us.
Okay. James Caan.
I mean, I must admit, I agree with the chap, actually, because, you know, isn't it amazing that all of a sudden we can find £500 billion, you know, from nowhere? So, I mean, I do think, I absolutely believe there is something wrong with the system, that your health is dependent on the postcode that you live in, not the condition, you know, that you're in. So, you know, absolutely, Jeff, I think as a government that is a real issue.
Well, we haven't found £500 billion, and let's be clear, we did not want to take the action that we have been forced to take. We had to take that action to protect your savings, your homes, the future stability of this country's economy. We didn't just decide one day that we're going to support the banks. We are in the middle of a global financial crisis that's seen long-established banks in the United States collapse, go out of business.
Let's not go back into that,
no, but it's important.
I know, we made the point there.
If we're weighing up the money that we've put huge amounts of extra money into the health service, and indeed local hospitals have gone from having quite a modest standard of success this year to having a very good standard of success because we have supported them financially. And it's really important that we put this into context.
Well, what is it the issue about where you live and not how ill you are?
But Claire put it very well. The reality is that from time to time, new drugs come along. Some of those can be astonishingly expensive. We need to be confident before they're put into use that they are proven successful and indeed safe.
But why can some areas put them into use and it seems like others can't?
The answer
no, they have the discretion.
All right, Dominic Grieve.
The answer to the first part of the question is because there is massively differential funding per head of population around the country. Now, to start off with, my own area is funded 18% for the NHS under the national average. Now, before I start condemning
because
that...
Because it's so well off.
No,
that's exactly right.
It is supposed to be based not on the fact that we're well off, but on the extent to which there is poor health, and the two do run together.
Exactly.
But I have to say to you, Jeff, is that it's quite apparent, because this isn't an individual example, I'm afraid it's happening all the time, it's quite apparent that the government's formula for looking at need does not actually work.
Are you talking about individual need or a need of an area like Stoke?
Collective need of an area, which is ultimately the reason why you have the postcode lottery.
But hold on, you say that in your area, which is Beaconsfield, which Claire Short says is a rich area, you get less funding. So presumably in Stoke-on-Trent, which is a relatively poorer area than Beaconsfield, you would expect more funding.
I would, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the formula will be working properly here. I'm making a collective point. I don't mind having a formula because I accept that if you get areas which are healthier, they probably should be getting less than areas which are less healthy. But the fact is that round the country, this formula is not working. So the first thing that we need to look at is the way the allocation formula operates. The second thing is the NHS is in a virtual monopoly purchaser position towards the drug industry. And it is with pharmaceutical industry. And it has the power, and indeed uses that power, to bring about, to fix prices when it feels the need to do it. It's obviously got to act fairly towards pharmaceutical companies. The cost of developing drugs is very high in some cases. But nevertheless, the NHS has much more flexibility than it